Design like you're right, test like you're wrong. Companies are less curious. They tend to stay with what they've done before. And in this routine space, they trade adventure with apathy, curiosity for comfort. And for ideas to be dangerous, they're going to challenge your comfort.
I am Sarah, the marketing manager and office manager at Desklight. Today, we are super excited to hear from Andrew Clark. When Andrew sent over a Ted Lasso quote to introduce his presentation, I knew this was going to be a fun one. So we're really excited to hear what he has to say today. Andrew has an impressive career spanning design leadership roles at renowned companies, and he currently spearheads the product design team at H&R Block. And he oversees the delivery of innovative and engaging client and associate experiences. Andrew's career has been marked by his passion for creating modern, visually bold work and building dynamic teams. Prior to his current role, he served as Senior Director, Global Brand Digital at Sonos, boosting the brand's online presence. And with a background that includes directing design teams at Bruce Mau Design and experience designing for startups like Minimal, Andrew brings a wealth of insights and a unique perspective to the intersection of design, technology, and brand expression. So thank you, Andrew, for joining us, and we are looking forward to hearing from you today.
Thank you, Sarah, and Aaron, and everyone at Desklight, and anybody who's joining. I'm fortunate to be here, and I get to share some of the things that keep me up at night, or some of the things that help me inspire the team, including Ted Lasso. That's definitely one of them. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and kick us off a little bit. Okay, hopefully you've all seen me, but more importantly, my family. My heroic wife, Anne, and my three kids, Emery, Tennyson, and Marla, who have taught me more about design, definitely about communication. And then behind us is some of our life. And I want to start here because the work I'm able to do and the work I love doing is inspired by my own life and the things that are around me and the people that I care most about. 3 years ago, we moved to Kansas, near Kansas City. And I drive across the state line to Missouri to head into the headquarters here and do what I do and lead a team here. This is some amazing art by Lewis Kopp, and I felt like it was so striking and so visual. It kind of represents a view into the plains. I grew up in parts of Texas, and what most people don't know is among the Texas bravado is the "Don't Mess with Texas" slogan. And I think this is a great example of how communications fail or succeed. And the fact is that this was a litter campaign to tell Texans not to litter in their state. It really wasn't about how great Texas was. And that's just an inspiring lesson in how well or not well we communicate. I survived 18 winters in Chicago. This is a scene from a blizzard in the 2000s. Chicago is a city that I love. I have a huge part of my history there. I know Desklight is there, and it teaches us a lot about how a city modernizes and how it stays relevant. I spent 5 years at Sonos, and this is a depiction of a timeline of a brand's identity, of who they are, the values, how they show up in the world. And I was fortunate, or you might look back on this and say, well, that's not so fortunate to kind of evolve a brand that many times in 5 years. It taught me tons of lessons about creativity, culture, and teams. And I'm really proud of the work, but really proud of the people that I was able to work with. And I wanted to start with a story a bit, a story I heard on 99% Invisible, but I'm going to go places that Roman didn't. So to back up a bit, imagine that you are in France. Napoleon III needs to feed an army as well as the people of France. And he offered a prize to solve a butter shortage. Butter, B-U-T-T-E-R. And Hippolyte takes a fatty acid compound invented by another person and turns it into a relatively cheap, good substitute for butter for the working class, and solves a user or a commercial problem. And in doing so, kicks off 100+ years of design, marketing, branding, user experience controversy. I'm going to unpack a little bit of that controversy and then get to some other thoughts I have. What you're looking at in the right is how they actually sold margarine. Margarine was the substitute for butter. And you might enjoy margarine today, but I can tell you, as margarine made its way from Europe to the Americas, Canada, and North America, it faced the butter mafia. And in fact, it led to things like it being illegal in parts of Canada for long stretches of time, decades, up until recent decades. Like you and I might not have been able to get margarine very easily in Canada. And actually, the Supreme Court had to lift a ban that had been started since 1886 that imposed a heavy tax on margarine because the butter suppliers didn't want this in the market. What you're looking at is actually we had to sell, this was prescribed, margarine in a gray color, the color it's actually naturally in, because they didn't want to appear yellow like butter. And so a really interesting user experience would be for you to buy it in a box and take it home, and they put a little bit of dye, and you would turn gray into yellow because they couldn't sell it yellow, but you didn't want to put it on your table, not yellow. And so the customer or the user in the end was the last bit of the margarine experience before you got to enjoy it. And as I mentioned this little bit about tax, it exposes kind of the interesting parts about tax, and that there was a tax against margarine, and they had to work many years to get that removed so that people could enjoy it. And I'm fortunate to be leading the head of design at H&R Block. I have about 30 people in UX, content, and service design. And our team and I partner with our creative teams and brand marketing to express that brand digitally. And I came here because I believed in the promise of the brand, which was to provide help and inspire confidence in our clients and our communities everywhere. But, you know, we all probably grew up with some version of this saying, which is it's impossible to be sure of anything but death and taxes, which is often attributed to Benjamin Franklin, but Christopher Bullock beat him to it in 1716. And yeah, that's kind of a sad emoji face. And part of being at H&R Block and a purpose that I have of being here is one, to put as much space between those two things, death and taxes. I don't want us to associate taxes with that. And actually then to shrink the space between design and taxes. I do want you to think that our taxes and broadly our financial services, which I'll get into that as well, were designed, and they had the power and the promise of design baked into them. And that led to great business results and even better customer outcomes. As I arrived at Block, there's the reality, which is on the left is the very first income tax form from 1913. And the one on the right is last year's 1040. 110 years later, they don't look very different. The user interface, the way you would input your information, send it to the IRS. So this space isn't really an innovative space, maybe. But in reality, the tax code has gone from 400 pages and actually only taxed, I believe, the top 5% in the country to 75,000+ pages, where everyone, including companies and businesses, are now taxed. And in that way, it has become a complex, complicated, dynamic space. And to help me, I had to look at others. I had to do research. I had to continue this identifying as a learner, which is a topic I would definitely love to learn more about. I kind of delved into some books, and here they are. There's a couple of them. They range from various people. And from them, I've kind of taken a general thought about what type of culture, how would we behave? How do we demonstrate? How would we create a safe place for dangerous ideas? Because not just at H&R Block, but really anywhere, without the right conditions, it's not going to be a very innovative space. Would you describe your organization, culture? Would you describe it this way? Or even your team? Is your team this place? And maybe the better question is, would you even want to? Paul Arden, the creative director at Saatchi & Saatchi, said, the person who doesn't make mistakes is unlikely to make anything. So when was the last time you heard an executive say, look, I was a part of that decision and we know it was bad? When was the last time your design or creative team said, that was confusing and we did not push the options hard enough? When was the last time Andrew said, that's my mistake? If those aren't frequent in your company or business or team, we need to be asking us why. What's holding us back? I think we're held back by our organization's immune system, a system racing with worry and threat and fear. In his TED Talk and then documentary, Alex Honnold, a free soloist, describes how he's able to do what we would all say is an extreme thing to do. And he acknowledges that the fear is there. The fear is very real to him. In fact, it's so real that he embraces it. He climbs through the fear. He's practiced and prepared so that when he's ascending, he's actually thinking through small movements, not the fear that's trapping him. But many of our workplaces today fear that errors shouldn't happen. And if they do, they should be buried. And if they can't be buried, well, then someone's to blame. So the natural impulse is to see mistakes as career ending. What do? Well, we make a defensive decision. We're going to settle for good enough. We're going to fight a fresh take. A research team led by Gerd Gigerenzer, the author of Risk Savvy, he studied 950 managers, and they found that to counter effects on innovation, leadership, we must cultivate a positive error culture. A team that deals with mistakes openly, routinely. A trusting and transparent team where feedback becomes learning. A culture that makes their leadership feel safe. A culture that sees errors as positive, much like the Wright brothers, who, in the span of just 3 years, gave us the magic of flight. Against the odds of a much larger, better funded, and in fact, longer time frame competitor that didn't reach flight. I was fortunate to be at a place in my early career where I began to experience this culture. That was Bruce Mau Design. I was a young architect and I had no business being asked to wrestle with some of the problems that I was asked to deal with. But then I looked around at a studio and this is what they were all doing. We saw the process as the project. We jumped fences when constrained. We zigged when others would zag. Our work pushed our clients beyond the brief. We asked, well, how could an art biennial be more like a World's Fair of ideas of possibility and proof for global change? We asked how Coca-Cola could build an experience in the heart of New York City that was equal parts effervescence, positivity, and transformation as it was enjoyment. We asked how readers would enjoy a deep, single chapter a week of a book and how they could explore the infinite left-hand page of a digital product, how a book club could meet virtually. We worked with a hospitality group to discover what type of new things could we bring to the hotel experience beyond the room into the city. We reinvented or imagined a way to listen in a retail environment that was like listening at home, that delivered the comfort and the audio quality and the feelings of dance and sadness and music. Bruce said, joy is the engine of growth. Exploit the liberty in casting your work as beautiful experiments, iterations, attempts, trials, and errors. Take the long view and allow yourself the fun of failure every day. We found ourselves, I find myself amplifying Bruce's positivity. It was a safe space filled with exhilaration and risk, conflict, fun, laughter, and joy. An environment that was trained to be curious. But the reality is most adults were not curious. Young, imaginative first graders like my daughter, Marlo, she'll ask 3 times as many questions in a single day than you or I. A Harvard Business School study found that only 24% of employees reported feeling curious in their jobs on a regular basis. And about 70% said they faced barriers to asking questions at work. Ian Leslie, in his great book, Curious, argues we stop asking questions because we're simply too busy. Good questions require time to germinate and grow. And as a result, our companies are less curious. They tend to stay with what they've done before. And in this routine space, they trade adventure with apathy, curiosity for comfort. And for ideas to be dangerous, they're going to challenge your comfort. Sophie von Stum and other researchers in their article, The Hungry Mind, found that curiosity might be the single best predictor of individual success because it incorporates three kind of amazing qualities: intelligence, persistence, and a hunger for novelty all in one. Persistence. You need to be tireless in pushing beyond your own ignorance boundaries. Everyone at H&R Block is challenged to be curious. It's not a corporate platitude. It's one of 7 behaviors we have, and we're expected to demonstrate every day. We are students of business and human behavior, relentlessly striving to understand the world around us and make our products and experiences extraordinary. It's leading us, the team, the associates at H&R Block, to all kinds of questions. I'd like to show you a few of those that we've been working on, we've experimented with, and some that we're just about to try. We experimented with a new way to help you choose what's the right tax prep method for you. It was short, it reduced the guesswork or the stress, and it communicated how we are experts in knowing tax. We're on our second version of our design system through learning about accessibility, better ways to build variables in our Figma tool, delivering different types of components and patterns in a way that we learned on our first version. We experimented with new virtual tools. Certainly every company was doing this as COVID hit, and we were no different. We've added to-dos to help you get prepared and to know your next best step, an appointment guide to help you get to the office or to set you up for a virtual appointment. And this way, we're bringing ease and expectation right to every customer. How do we leverage the largest financial moment for hardworking Americans, which is their tax refund, into months of smart saving and spending? How do we create behaviors that compound like money? How might we better prepare our clients' finances for the rainy day, which we know is coming? Or just get them through today? How might we set income and saving goals that inspire confidence and not desperation? How do we encourage them to watch their spending at their pace from a non-judgment place? How do we deliver the right insight at the right moment and then attach that to a positive behavior, which we know gets them to the results they want? How do we think about new tax pro tools like loan applications that allow customers choice and ease and make their tax pros look confident? How do we make that 30 to 60 minute in office experience time well spent for the customer? How do we personalize the advice just for you when each of our returns is unique to our 20 million customers? And yes, how do we incorporate AI into our DIY product and many others to provide expert help for all of us who aren't tax experts? And then how do we add AI in a way to catch errors, possible deductions, and one day even advice? Our design team is experimenting along with all the other teams at H&R Block. We make progress, not perfection. We quickly validate those ideas with data. Walt Disney said, Curiosity keeps us moving forward, exploring, experimenting, opening new doors. Walt Disney left Kansas City after bankrupting his first animation studio, Lasso. And he headed to Los Angeles, and it took decades before Disney became the Disney that you and I know. Eventually, opening a door to a young, experimental company that no one else was backing at the time called Pixar. Mistakes are happening at H&R Block because we're making. There are moments when the results don't measure up, or the pilot wasn't executed well. There are times our designs weren't easy to use, or the feature just didn't resonate in the way we wanted it to. And yet, we're also having some success too. Charles and Ray Eames experimented for decades before finally arriving at the molded fiberglass side chair, which is the chair on the right. Each version that they experimented with went on to be its own iconic design itself, the DCM, the DCW, the lounge chair, but was still just an attempt for their vision in the molded fiberglass chair. They called it their 30-year flash. They allowed themselves the space for fun and failure and curiosity, a safe place for their comfortable but dangerous idea. So with that, I would love to see if you have questions, or maybe some of those ideas sparked questions, and I'll do my very best to respond and hopefully come up with some ways of expanding or adding to the thoughts I've already shared.
Thank you, Andrew, for that. I love the stories that you pulled in. I think those really resonated with a lot of people. This is kind of an aside, but you mentioned the behaviors of H&R Block, and that curiosity is one of them. I was curious what the other behaviors are, and just kind of a little more of those specifics of how you change them from a platitude to actual lived behaviors.
I'd love talking about behaviors, and I have to give a shout out to the people and culture team that have developed the behaviors and iterated on them. They're even doing the design thing of iterating, providing us additional ways of taking them farther and deeper into our work. The first thing I want to stress is that they're not values. They were intentionally called behaviors. A lot of companies have values, things that you value. These are ways that we're expected to show up. It's a behavior. I have to behave in a curious way. And that allows us then to define what would it look like if you were talented in that behavior, all the way to maybe less skilled, or even at times, even Andrew overuses curiosity. And so we went through the process of saying, well, here are the 7 behaviors. Here are the ways we can define them so you know how you're doing, how you're showing up and demonstrating them. And then we can coach each other. We can recognize those things in each other. I'll give you just a few of the others, but not all 7. Straightforward. I love this one. Bold. And actually, bold people think is like being direct. For us, bold tends to be are you seizing the opportunities, the right opportunities? Customer-centric is a key one, of course. And many companies would have that as a value. But for us, customer centricity defines how we act and how we behave. And of course, we have our customers. We have tax associates, tax pro associates, and people in the field that are here for tax season and a little bit beyond. That can range from 30 to 70,000 people. We have our franchisees. And all of us are working on delivering value and solving pain points for those groups of individuals. And our ability to behave and to show up this way helps us define the problems or the solutions or the opportunity spaces. And as a team, most importantly, build a connected culture, a culture that is able to behave and to kind of work with each other. Now, I don't know if the culture I described is what we would define as connected, but the idea around the behaviors showing up is key. And so leading our teams through them, leading the company through how they solve problems is core. And oh, sorry, Sarah, you asked about corporate platitudes. Well, hopefully I've put a little bit of color around, like there's a difference between a value and a behavior. They give us definitions that we can help coach each other on. As a design team, I was so excited to read the behaviors. Problem solver is another one. I mean, like 6 of the 7 more or less are like, hey, design, just like what you're supposed to be doing all the time. It's like problem solving, being curious centric, customer centric. And they fit very naturally into, I think, some of the disciplines, some of the ways that we think, human-centered design, if you want that to be the label you'd use. And so for our design team, I'm hoping that the behaviors I hope they work for them here at H&R Block. And as they move on to other places, which, I hope they don't do too quickly, I hope they just continue to do those things. And that's really one reason why this curiosity kind of thought started about 2 years ago when I arrived at H&R Block in kind of my first year into it. And then has only continued to be this thing that I've been searching and researching and reading and figuring out, well, how do we build a culture that is that? How do I build a design team? How do I get to steward a design team that is curious and experiments and isn't afraid of the failure or the mistakes, but actually, much like Sister Corita Kent would say, is that everything is an experiment. There is no fail. And so how do we take that mindset into our work? Thank you for asking that question.
Yeah, thank you. And then Dana asked, this feels like not a fun question, but our progress reports the evidence of curiosity behavior?
It's a great question. And it is something that I've thought a lot about, which is if there's no fail, in business, that's not real. Okay. In a sense, I actually think that by experimenting, by being curious, by making is the uber point, is to make things. By making things, you actually get to success. You actually get progress faster. But a lot of cultures, if you are afraid, you will do what's been done before. And you'll probably do less. You'll make less. You will try less. Your bets will be smaller. And in that environment, every one of those things has to work. You give yourself very little room to fail. So then you become more defensive. If you increase your at-bats, if you increase your chances of success, well, then you can take either bigger bets or moderately sized bets because you're doing it quicker, you're learning faster, your mistakes are actually just common in the process. So I believe that you can make more progress by making more. And how would you measure your success? Well, that's when the teams have to start thinking very closely, which we've started to do here, about OKRs, ways of saying, what would success look like? And how do I make an experiment towards that eventual goal? And then realizing that that success could also move on you as you achieve it. The success bar could move up to the right. Customers could pivot and not want this anymore. So you would look successful, but in the end, they're saying no, not the thing they want, or a pain point could shift on you. And I expect AI in many ways to shift pain points today we experiencing into different opportunity spaces that we then have to say, okay, well, I could fix this, but in reality, I could create this that will solve that pain point over there. So our teams are measured. I mentioned the data bit, and our team is focusing on crafting OKRs like the rest of the business. Our design system has OKRs like the rest of the business. And that allows us to measure progress while taking this kind of mindset. And I'll add one more thought, which is I mentioned safe, a safe place. You want to make your leadership safe. That's all about intention sharing and your ability to share your intentions, share how you're going to measure success gives you the ability for that space of experimentation, right? Because you've checked in, you've said, I intend to do this, and I think this will be the outcome. I heard from a financial advisor this statement: certainty is easy to sell because everybody's looking to buy it. And that's real. Everyone wants more certainty. In fact, certainty shows up in lots of ways today, like instant gratification. Like I can track my Amazon package through almost every moment of its journey. So the expectation is I need to understand where everything is at all the time. And in reality, that certainty starts to build a customer mindset in lots of places that never show up. And in business, people definitely want certainty. They want, some bets, of course, but they want a lot of certainty. And so if you're able to sell a way of looking at certainty with some risk tolerance, but mostly this experimentation and curiosity, research and understanding human behavior and business, you're going to be able to allow your teams to experiment and to innovate and to find new solutions. Because certainly the ones that have worked, we could stay with that. It's certain, but you're also giving all the upside away.
Thank you. And Allison asked, I lead a small in-house creative marketing team, all of us in different parts of the country. Our resources, time, energy, and money are limited, but I know we need to prioritize curiosity and make time for experimentation. What are small ways we can carve out time for this?
That's a great question in the sense that I probably don't have an answer. I've got responses to it. And in a way, part of what I was describing, part of what I'm building, part of how I think about things is a culture of experimentation, a culture that says, I'm going to try a new take. But when time is tight, when resources are small, we tend to think about those things as mutually exclusive. I can't do both. And you have to almost unlock the ability to say, in those constraints, where could I experiment? What's the smallest increment of experimentation or curiosity I could have? While advocating to partners and stakeholders and possibly even your own team that doesn't really want to have this environment or be in it, that we need to be doing more. That the more curious we are about whether or not this feature or this product is even good for our customers, the more curious we are about that, the more likely we are to launch the right one or to put it in the right channel or to say the right message. We just finished a body of work to go to market, and our marketing and creative teams started with research. We listened to the customer on things they need and want, and that drove the messages that we were going to just simply reflect back to them in our way, as opposed to, here's the thing we want to tell you. And but it kind of had to start with being curious, and then of course experimenting, because a lot of people would say, well, just tell them your products and services. Well, we're doing a new thing. And in that space, your comfort will change without actually changing things like resources. It certainly can't change time, but your ability to move small things that feel like we could take a chance on that, when we could experiment something new there, into what if we did that for most of our work? And I showed you some experiments that didn't work. There's that pivot perseverance moment in everything. You have to kind of say, it's not what we thought, let's move on. And to not see that as a failure, but as Gerd Gigerenzer and his team would say, but to see it openly in transparency as a learning. We learned this thing won't do what we expected. And we had a good thought that it would, because we were curious and we studied it a bit. And we put the right intention and right time in the options and the creative ideas or the product feature set. And it just didn't turn out. And in that space, I think small or large teams can start this kind of Ted Lasso, you ain't doing it right if it's not comfortable kind of mindset.
Thank you. Archana asks, or she said, I love the emphasis on making over success and failure. And then she asks, in a team setting, how do you find actionable ways to learn from feedback? Do you have any rituals or procedures in place to ensure learning?
There are some that they're labeled certain things in certain environments. So like Agile will call things like retrospectives. There's some like design reviews or critiques. I think the ability for you and the whole team and the stakeholders of the work, like you should get together often. You should get together often and share the work. You should always be listening for feedback. Feedback's very good. It's in fact a whole talk I have about how to give generous feedback. And you should listen to as much of it. And you should also say not all of it's actionable. Okay, that's kind of like how you do the feedback dance. In that space, you could even wind up in a defensive culture, though. Okay, they shot down all the wild cards. Well, what if we tested one of the wild cards, but we went to market with the one that we know? Hey, that's moving it forward, right? What if we moved into user research, validated some ideas, and then said, let's go to market with them while having the backup ready or the rollback to the feature we know? That's providing a safe place, right? For a dangerous or possibly very inventive idea. Where feedback can kind of detrimentally affect that process is when it comes back as we've done it like that before and it doesn't work. Or what type of data do you have that supports that idea? Of course, if your answer is no, well, then that's not going to make anybody feel very safe. How many options did you look at before this one? Well, that goes to my making comment. Show them the hundreds of options you did explore. Our team is driven partly because of kind of a mentality that I have is in making. Cool, those are great options. I'd love to see 3 more. Well, I know, but we've kind of done a lot. I'm like, I know, just try and do 3 more. Pushing yourself in your boundary of ignorance, as I called it earlier, allows you to feel confident that there weren't things we left out. We looked at a lot. We showed tons to customers and got a lot of feedback before we went to market on them. You don't want to be in that space where you're endlessly looking for edge cases or options, but you don't want to be in the space of we had only one. That's the space you won't feel safe in. I doubt you experimented enough in, and probably you didn't test beyond your own curiosity in that space. Another mentality and feedback, the last one I'll mention, is design like you're right, test like you're wrong. Bring your expertise to the solution that you're trying to create, the creative mind you have and the curiosity or the experimentation you want to bring, and then work equally or even harder at why that will work. What will I have missed? Where did it go? The market, the customer, the business in the last 4 months since I've been working on this problem. If you bring that mindset to it and you turn out to be right, fantastic. If you turn out to be wrong or fail or make a mistake because you're making, you get a chance to make the next one. You get a chance at doing the thing that will have the largest amount of success. And in that way, I can tell you, you won't be in a defensive, fight the fresh take posture at all.
I'm wondering if you look for curiosity in the hiring process or if it's just part of the culture and then it kind of comes as people become part of the organization.
I definitely look for it in the hiring process. It's a key way of identifying someone that I think will succeed on the teams that I lead. There's a lot of teams out there. You all have teams. They all have leaders. Each leader is building a team that they think will be successful. For me, a curious team helps me and the whole team that I lead be successful. Block obviously prioritizes, H&R Block prioritizes curiosity as well, which is why I love being here. But curiosity, much like culture, is cultivated. Andrew could say it matters. If the 30 or 40 people that I work with and steward and get to like lead, and they do some amazing work that I shared, if they're not cultivating it, if they're not into it, it won't ever take. It simply won't be part of the thing that we're building as a group. So that's why I've defined this as a safe place. I'm working on this. It is the thing that I am trying, and my effort goes into a place where different levels of curiosity only grow more. So you can come in with maybe a lower level because we're all on that spectrum of what we're curious about. But I hope by the time you leave and you go on to your next thing and you're radically successful there, you will have a deeper or a larger or a more expansive or a better understanding of curiosity, and you will take that to your next place. And if people said the skill set I had exiting H&R Block before my next design opportunity or creative opportunity was I radically grew into a more experimental or curious person, I would look back and say, okay, I've had some amount of success. One of the ways I look for curiosity in interviews, certainly the work, the way people behave, like how they talk about their work, but also I'm looking for people to pull in their answers, responses to questions, things that you would have to find outside of our field. That slew of books I put up there, I think only one was design adjacent, one maybe. I spend most of my time not reading design or creative books. And the intention there is I am looking for connections I can't find or that some other designer already found. And that's a curious mind. My curiosity this year was decision making. So risk savvy, gut feelings, bets, even the creative way, The Creative Life, A Way of Being by Rick Rubin, is actually an artistic lens into decision making. It's fantastic. I highly encourage you all to read it. And I'm hoping, with 3 weeks left, that after this year, creatively, or as a leader, or as a coach, as a dad or husband, partner, I am better at making decisions. I feel good about the decisions I make. I feel confident, and I'm willing to say that some of them weren't great, but that was a kind of a journey I wanted to go on this year for my team, for things I'm trying to learn, and certainly will impact my design work. But reading primary source material on decision making is a lot of white papers. It's very dense, but that's kind of the curious mind that I would love to hire at H&R Block.
I have another question. And so you were just mentioning a word that you've been thinking about this year. And I was sharing earlier before everybody hopped on that Aaron encouraged us to all come up with a word for next year. And my word actually is discomfort, which I thought applied great with this talk. So I'm already like kind of thinking of that word, and I'm just finding like I'm trying to put myself in uncomfortable situations to learn and grow, but it's just so easy to go back to your habits and stay in your place of comfort. So how do you, I know you talked about how curiosity kind of helps you come out of that, but how do you really pull yourself out of your comfort zone to keep challenging your ideas for that growth?
I want to stress that I'm on my own journey. And while these thoughts I present is maybe like real or they work, like I think they work, I believe in them enough to kind of share them. I'm still working on them. So I bring that up around comfort. Like I also love being comfortable. That's real. I enjoy it. So I don't know if you could always be uncomfortable all the time. I set a few intentions around where do I want to be uncomfortable. And yes, I probably have a disposition, a personality. I enjoy being uncomfortable, more so maybe than others, without a lot of hard work. There's some amazing biohacking going on about the benefits of being uncomfortable, and things like cold showers, fasting, things that you can do to neurologically help you be better at uncomfortability. But also what that teaches us, what the research suggests, is you become gritty, you become persistent, you become more successful at things that matter. The marshmallow test in 1972, would a child give up an extra marshmallow by sitting there patiently and waiting and not eating the first one? They actually tracked those children for 40 years, and they learned that the children who waited and got two instead of one became more successful in many areas of their life. And that was really around that idea of being uncomfortable. Like, yeah, it was much easier to eat that marshmallow right away. So this is an idea that I'll share around delayed gratification. In the financial services space, much like health and weight and trying to achieve any large goal, you're going to have to delay success in the ultimate goal along the journey. And your ability to compound small changes, 0.01, over 10 years, as opposed to no change, 0.0, is huge. So how does Andrew stay uncomfortable? I work hard at every few years changing my career. I started as an architect. I moved into brand. I did retail. Now I'm focused on product design. That's me intentionally saying I want to be uncomfortable, but I also want to bring a little bit of the transferable skill set along too. So I've been in the design field. I'm not a doctor or a lawyer. That would be very uncomfortable for me. I've done that in places where I could be safe too. Places that I had great mentors, creative leaders, places that took a chance on me. And I was willing to do a lot of the hard work in that I don't know this very well. So one area of uncomfortability that most people will touch and then, okay, that's too much, is, especially for designers, is I don't understand how the business makes its money. How do you monetize this thing? And I'll share this example, and that'll be the end of the answer. Is At Sonos, I roughly set a goal to understand the way we made money at Sonos within 4 years. And it took me about 5. And actually kind of took this step to come to H&R Block shortly after realizing it finally, I kind of get all those things that people definitely got day one, maybe who were charged with those roles. So how would I be uncomfortable at H&R Block? I would try and accelerate that learning to 3 years. And so while I don't know every aspect of our business and how we monetize and deliver those services, over the last 3 years, I have met with business leaders and I have focused in monthly one-on-ones, my questions, my curiosity to them. Yeah, we talk about other stuff every now and then, but it's mostly, I want to learn IT. I want to learn the field. I want to learn labor. I want to learn how our people and culture team drives change across 70,000 people. I want to learn how financial services will impact tax. I want to learn how small business could be the largest growth opportunity for us. And by doing that, I feel more confident that I'm learning the business side. And so for designers, if you're out there, like if that's something that you're challenged with, or you're like, I don't want to touch that, get uncomfortable, get into that space, and then be willing to be in it and be okay with it being uncomfortable. It won't, like Alex and the fear. You're going to feel the fear and work through the fear. And I love that as your yearly word of the year. That's a great word.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay, I think this is my last question. It seems like some people have to jump off. So unless you have another question, drop it in the chat. But I'll end with, how do you said you're a dad, we saw your kids. How do you teach curiosity to your children?
Fortunately, they're way more curious at times, evenly, like by asking why, 1,000 times, which oddly, as a consultant, then we pitch other clients the 5 whys, which would probably annoy them in the wrong setting. That's like a Rory Sutherland thing around framing. For a kid, that's cute. For an adult, that's this like, yeah, why I'm paying these people to ask me 5 whys, but it actually kind of works. How do I encourage them to be curious? One is encouraging them to try many different things and resist specialization. Until they really show aptitude or passion. Michael Jordan didn't really say basketball was his thing until way late in high school. And I think our culture today actually only accelerates any type of specialization in the guise of perfection or performance early on. Let them be diverse. Answer their whys to kids, especially. You might not have the answer. That's okay. Go find the answer. My son and I were watching orca videos on YouTube. I didn't know the answer. He's really into orcas. Okay, let's go watch some stuff about orcas. And I learned through that way. Listen to their questions. Kids are they're insanely curious, but again, they have a limited way of thinking about the world until they expand it. And I'm learning from them just as much as they're learning from me. When explaining what a giraffe is, it could actually sound much like a horse or any 4-legged creature or any creature with a long neck. And so when I'm talking to my children, it's like, okay, how do I describe that very specifically? It's yellow with spots here, not there. It's got, well, that's just them being curious. The thing I probably wish I did more of, I wish I made more with them. They are all making things all the time. Imaginative play, blocks, Minecraft, coloring, art. They all love doing that stuff. And I wish I spent more time doing that with them and understanding how they make and experimenting. And I hope they see me doing my thing, and that kind of like is that mirror for them. Like, oh yeah, so Dad's doing this, and if anything, I would double down on my time there, and I would sit there in Minecraft with them, or I would imaginatively build little buildings and cities with them, and that's how I would attempt to like continue moments of their life. They're going to go on to be my age one day. I hope when I'm, in my 70s and 80s, I'm still the dad that's like stoking their curiosity. Like, yeah, move on to that next thing. Try the next discipline. You don't have to worry about that. Or like, wow, that experiment was, well, that was a failure, man. Like, I think you should like, make me feel safe. You're making a good college decision here. Like all those little tricks, I hope. One little anecdote I learned from a book, Quiet Leadership, is putting things in number sense. And so I kind of asked them this, and they're very good at doing this, not game, but this tactic, which is, let's say they're frustrated, or let's say they're excited to learn something. They've had a good day or a bad day. I asked them, hey, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best day you think you're ever going to have in your entire life, and 0 being absolutely the day you wish never happened. But what type of day is this? What type of frustration is this? What type of effort on your spelling test did you do, right? Kids have an amazing ability to pick a number. They're not freaking out about 7 is this and 4 is this. So they'll say 3. And I'll say, cool. That's a good number. I mean, I don't know. The number's their number. But in some instances, I'm able to say, hey, listen, you're really upset right now, but you just told me it's a 2 out of 10. Do you think you're like behaving like a 2? You're behaving like it's a 10. They're like, yeah, it's not that big of a deal. And in some ways, this little tactic, the kind of way of framing what's going on, it actually builds their curiosity, because then they're able to say, within all of my experience, what does this feel like? And I think they're able to better say, this feels great. I loved my results on that spelling test. And then they get more curious about improving, or maybe not having that same day. So maybe that's a cool tactic for you. I do this not only for them, I do it for my entire team, how we start our one-on-ones, for my individual direct reports, how we start our one-on-ones. You could use the feelings wheel, similar result in some ways. It's checking in and then using that to say, what would you be curious about? What thing do you want to experiment on in your own skill set, in your own day, in your own, how do I write a better email to influence behavior? Hey, let's go there. So hopefully that's a good answer on kids being curious, but I need this to myself. So how adults stay curious too.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you so much. I have a son who lives in extremes, so I feel like he's either a 1 or a 10. So I need to introduce the numbers to help him see there's some numbers there in the middle. And I love that ending of focusing on the kids, because I think that's kind of how you began too, is we just need to have that childlike curiosity and kind of look to them and take that into our roles to continue growing and learning and making in the things that we're doing. So thank you so much, Andrew, for coming, and thank you everybody for joining us. It was so fun to learn from you, and we hope to see you again next month.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, everybody.